Hi,
Hello. Hi. Hi, Ursula.
finally made it.
Good to see you. Been a while.
Yeah, absolutely. How are
Hi.
you doing?
I am good. And let me just get the volume right. Perfect. So, hi everyone. I am Yosha. I'm the founder of MeMeraki, and we have with us today Ursula. And for those of you who don't know about why we've started the series of conversations, so for the last 3 or 4 months, we've started this series called Heart Talks, where we basically want to have a conversation with art aficionados, art historians like Ursula, people in the field of arts and crafts to just have more candid conversations, explore some particular arts and crafts or even art appreciation in a deeper way. So yeah, we've been doing this for the last 2 3 months and very excited to have Ursula with us today. I won't go too much into introducing you, Ursula, because I would love for you to do that, and that's literally what we wanted to get started with. That, would love to start with literally your journey, that, what started the love for art and especially art history. I've read about it a little bit, but I read a bit about how, the walks you did with your father back in your childhood. I think is that what the beginning of the love for art was? But yeah, would love for you to
Yeah,
tell us actually.
definitely. Definitely. So I grew up in Oxford.
Mhm.
My dad was a history professor in the university
Ah,
there, and my mum was a classics teacher in the
ah,
school that I actually
ah.
attended. And always we would go on holidays, and we didn't really do the sort of skiing beach holidays kind of that a lot of my friends did. We always did the kind of like going around museums and cities and things. And yeah, my one whole half of my family lives in Vienna, and at that time I remember when I was about 6 years old in the Kunsthistorisches Museum, and I stood in front of the amazing Velasquez portrait of the
Mhm.
Infanta Margarita. Now I have like got
Ah,
these images, and I'm just working out how to, sorry, I just made myself
uh,
go right. I just want to work out how to share some images while I'm here, but I can't kind of quite
yeah,
see
on
exactly what I do.
Instagram Live, it's impossible to share images from your laptop. You might just have to turn the
No, I
phone
have them on
around
my
a bit.
phone.
Oh, on
I
your
do have
phone.
it on my phone, but I just can't see the little photograph, the little camera icon that means that you can share them. And I'm in the process just making myself go brighter and brighter.
That's
um,
lovely
I'm
too.
not quite sure. Oh, I'm
Yeah,
so
if
sorry. Is
people
when
in our comments, if anybody knows, do tell us if you know how to share photos on Instagram Live. But even I'm not sure if you can share pictures on Instagram Live. We've done that
yeah.
on Zoom
Okay. Well, look,
sessions.
I'll
Yeah,
I'll just
yeah.
explain them.
Yes, please.
So there's this amazing portrait of the Infanta Margarita. She's about 6 or 7 years old, which was the age I was at that time,
Ah,
and and it was just so incredible. I looked at that artwork and I just thought, oh, I want her dress. Her dress comes out like about 2 meters from her body or whatever,
ah,
and so yeah, that was I think one of the beginnings of my real love
love
for
for
art.
yeah.
But then, it was something that developed over the course of then I went on to read history at
Hmm.
university at Cambridge. And while I was there, I would always choose the most art related topics within my course.
Okay.
So that was the
Yeah,
beginning.
but I would say I guess it was in your DNA as well, literally, right? With your
Yeah,
mom and dad's background, it was literally that it was flowing in your DNA basically as well, right? So
absolutely.
that's wonderful to
Absolutely.
know. And yeah, everyone who's joining us, if you have questions, please do keep typing in as well, and we'll try and take questions, sometime
Cool.
during the middle of the conversation as well. But so the love for history and art, you explained that. Now tell us about the love for Mughal art specifically as well. Like what led you to
Yeah.
Mughal art specifically and specializing in Mughal art?
Yeah, well, my art history career really began in European art because I did an MA in Dutch painting at the Courtauld. I then worked for about 3 years in the Ashmolean Museum in the print room, taking care of the collection of prints and drawings. And
Lovely.
then I went on to do a PhD in the field of early printmaking. And so that was my first major book called Early Engravers and Their Public. And it was all about this group of printmakers in the Rhineland in the 15th century. And just after I had finished that and published that, my husband and I moved to Delhi. And so I
Ah.
applied for a postdoctoral fellowship with the Commonwealth, and I then came to India as a postdoctoral fellow, based first of all at the National Museum Institute and then at IGNCA, Indira Gandhi National Centre for Arts.
Mhm.
And that was just such a privilege, amazing. And so I was looking to you know, develop my whole new research interests in the connections between European prints and their circulation and, you know, India. And obviously in the Mughal period in the 1580s, as European travelers, merchants, diplomats and so on started to come to India, they brought a lot of prints with them. And Mughal artists, you know, the emperor would just give it straight off to his artists, and they had a very profound impact really on Mughal artists, not from a position of colonialism. You know, these guys, they didn't need anything from Europe at this time. You know, everyone were like these, you know, backwater country, you know,
Yeah.
off on the side that were, you know, just trying to get a little look in on the act of the magnificence of Mughal India. So but Mughal artists really saw an opportunity to create a very unique look to their art by blending a lot of different stylistic influences. So I started working on that really, and I loved my time in India.
Ah, so that's how it, you know, it was what you were already working on. You were sort of exploring, taking that forward, trying to find a connection within that at your time, during your time in India, and that's ultimately what developed the, you know,
Exactly.
bent towards Mughal art.
Exactly. And then when we moved back from India, I started teaching on Mughal art at the Courtauld Institute, and also with a lot of other different groups.
Lovely.
So yeah.
Tell us a bit more about your time in India, though. You know, you're studying you were studying at JNU, and your time exploring all of Mughal art. Tell us a bit more about your time in Delhi and in India.
While I was doing the postdoctoral fellowship, I then it was at a time when wonderful Kavita Singh was on a Getty research project, and she had some sabbatical leave and very kindly asked me to teach the Mughal MA students at JNU in the School of Arts and Aesthetics. So I became guest faculty at JNU, and I absolutely loved that experience. I mean, the students that I engaged with at JNU, they were so bright, so committed, and really, you know, just 100% all kind of, you know, such a great teaching experience. In fact, up till that point, I don't think I had really liked teaching that much, but being in JNU was what gave me an absolute passion for teaching, actually. And I still keep up with a number of my students, which is so nice.
Did you get a flavor of the argumentative Indians during that time?
Only in the nicest possible way. I mean, you know, but I love that. I love the kind of, you know, questioning and everything. So that was fantastic. And then and
then going back to the UK, you continued teaching Mughal art as well. So what was that like?
I did.
You know,
So you see, because during that period I had the postdoctoral fellowship, but I also had a few stints of maternity leave, because amazingly India gave us the gift of 3 children as well.
Lovely.
So all my 3 children came into our lives while we lived in Delhi.
I love that.
So that's fantastic. Yeah, they all have red hair. Well, no, sorry, my 2 boys have really bright red hair, and my husband, because they were born in India, my husband's dream was that they could be on the Indian cricket team.
Oh wow, I love it. Do they have a love for cricket? I hope they've developed a love for cricket.
Yeah, they have a great love of cricket. Definitely. So then coming back to, so it took me a while to really 100% decide that Mughal studies was going to be my professional field, you know, because I was juggling maternity leave and everything as well. But really then by sort of 2007, 2008, I was just so in love with the new field that I was really working in. And I had been learning Persian, going to one
Oh,
wonderful
how
old
lovely.
Persian teacher called Yunus Jaffrey in Old Delhi. I would like
Mm-hmm.
park my car at the Turkman Gate and then get on a little cycle rickshaw, go right into the old city and up to his wonderful home there. Um,
I love it.
I'd
I
also,
love that you actually learn Persian as well. That's beautiful
yeah,
because
and
yeah, a lot of the
I learned
inscriptions are
Hindi,
in Persian.
obviously.
Yeah, I was
I
going to
learned,
ask you that as well. Did you learn Hindi?
yeah, Hindi, although I'm particularly good on my kind of, like street Hindi,
I
kitchen
love.
Hindi, and all of these things.
Okay.
And so so
Yeah.
yeah, that was just a fantastic experience. Then coming back to London, teaching at the Courtauld, really I had gone so deep onto certain aspects of
Mm-hmm.
Mughal art, but when you start teaching, you really have to nail down everything, the big
Yeah.
picture. And
Yeah.
so I loved that teaching, and teaching such a dynamic experience because you're in the classroom. And
Mm-hmm.
I passionately believe that teaching is an experience that should change everyone. It should change the educator as well
Yes.
as those who are
So
being taught,
yeah. Yeah.
and
That's a beautiful
so
way of
yeah,
looking at it, actually. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, not
And
not
I love
enough
that.
educators, not enough educators think of, how it should change them as well, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's a lot about what influence they have on the students, but not, I don't think enough people think about what influence it has on them. So I'm so happy to hear that. That's
yeah,
a
yeah,
beautiful way of looking at it.
yeah, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So I would love to dive a little deeper into Mughal art because, I mean, as you know, we host workshops, with a lot of different kinds of miniature art. And, it's still a little nebulous, how, Mughal art actually came to India. What's the connection with Persian art? So would love to dive a little, deeper into that for our audience because we do get asked that a lot. And, obviously our research is a little bit based on what we get to hear from our master artists that we work with and a little bit of what's available on the internet. But from an expert like you, it would be great to just get a small summary of, how did Mughal art actually come to India? What's the connection with Persian art? If you can tell us a
Yeah.
bit about that.
First of all, I'll answer your question, but I just want to say I just love what MeMeraki is doing, and I
Thank you
love
so
how
much.
it's bringing
Thank
these
you.
master artists to a global audience, and that opportunity. I think so many people love to learn and have a go
Yeah.
themselves at making art. So I think it's just
Thank
wonderful
you.
what you're doing.
Trying.
Um,
We still feel we're taking baby steps, but so much to do. And,
No,
honestly,
it's
like
such
this,
an interactive
having,
way of
yeah,
connecting with history, with culture,
yeah.
tradition, and also just really giving a platform to the master
Mhm.
artists as well, which is just
Absolutely. And
fantastic.
I think that's our mission, the fact that we want to create a strong digital voice for them, a strong
Yeah,
online voice for them, because that just doesn't exist right now.
yeah, yeah. So to answer your question, yeah, when the Mughal dynasty, Turco-Mongol, in their ancestry, and they established an empire in India through the first emperor Babur in 1526.
Mm-hmm.
But really, we don't have any art. There's no miniature painting at all that survives from the period of Babur. The only thing we have are some of the manuscripts that he owned, but they were older. They weren't manuscripts commissioned by him. So the first Mughal art that we actually have in existence that survives is painting made for the second emperor, Humayun.
Okay.
Now, Humayun, as you may know, he lost control of India for a period to the Sher Shah Suri. And while he lost control of India, he took refuge at the court of the Safavid emperor Shah Tahmasp. And Shah Tahmasp had a very elaborate painting workshop. They made an exquisite Shahnameh. And then Shah Tahmasp decided he sort of had a kind of conversion to a more orthodox Islamic faith. And so he decided to disband his workshop. And Humayun thought, wow, I'm going to get some of these artists. So Humayun, at that time, he had a court in Kabul, and he attracted to his court in Kabul some of the finest artists of his day. So they were all Safavid or late Timurid artists. And that's the kind of foundation of the Mughal school of art. Now, by 1555, Humayun came back to India. He regained control of Delhi, and he had his court in now the Purana Kila, Dinpana, and only a year later, sadly for him, he died. He tripped on his robe as he was turning to pray in the staircase of his library. But he'd already brought back many of these Persian artists. The most famous were Mir Said Ali and Abdus Samad. But very quickly, Humayun was also drawing Indian artists into his workshop as well. And then Akbar, as soon as he took over as a young teenager, one of his earliest commissions was for this blockbuster manuscript called Hamzanama. And this tells the kind of weird and wonderful tales, you know, all the adventurous chivalric tales of this hero called Hamza. And these were huge paintings. They were over 1 meter in size, painted on cloth, which is a typical feature of early Mughal painting. And in order to accomplish this task, which was due to have 1,200 paintings as part of this manuscript, they just had to recruit really heavily into the Mughal workshops. And, you know, from about 10 to 15 years later, the Mughal workshops begin to keep records of the names of the artists, the clerks of the library, the Kitab Khana, and they write the names. And so once we see all these names, you realize from all the different parts of India that artists were drawing. There was a big contingent that came from Gujarat. You know, you get Prem Gujarati, Sudars Gujarati. There was Nand Waliori, he clearly came from Gwalior. There was Ibrahim Kashmiri, he obviously came from Kashmir. So, you know, they're really drawing in these artists. So at this point then, they're also wanting to create their own distinctive look because, you know, the Safavid is a major competitor empire. So they don't want their art just to look like Safavid art, right? They want to have a distinctive look to their own art. And this is one of the reasons that then Mughal art begins to blend, you know, Hindu styles of painting, like indigenous Indian Jain Sultanate styles of painting get drawn into it, you know, together with that Persian format. But they do essentially shift over from a horizontal format of painting, which is typical of Indian pre-Mughal art, into the vertical format, because ultimately Persian art is a book art. And so that's why the vertical format begins to become the predominant format in the Mughal idiom.
How interesting. I mean, it's so interesting to hear that, you know, for Humayun, this art was almost his refuge at that time, literally, right? That's almost what it sounds like. He came back and, you know, like, you know, art started flourishing. And I think one of my questions to you was going to be, okay, this initial set of artists who joined, like, where did they come from? But you answered that literally, like, the number of artists that they needed, it was just so big that they had to come from all over India, right? So it sort of started amalgamating these different styles of, you know, Indian art as well, and became a very distinctive style of its own. And is that when it was given the name of Mughal miniature art as well? Or, you know, so did that name actually
Mughals,
start? Like,
the term actually Mughal, they didn't use it themselves at this period at all. They called themselves Guregenia, and that comes back from their Timurid heritage, because Timur himself, he sort of gained his legitimacy through having married into the line of Genghis Khan, and Guregan means son-in-law. And so the Mughals in the kind of period of the great Mughals, they call themselves the son-in-law dynasty, as it were, the Guregenia. So it connects to that that whole Timurid heritage that they have. I think they begin to become known more as Mughals in the 18th century.
Got it. Okay. Just, and I mean, that's just referring to the heritage. It was brought by them, and that's how probably the name sort of stuck. Okay. Very interesting. And tell me a bit, you know, tell us a bit more about, you know, all these different sort of branching of the miniature style as well. That I know that we host, for example, Kangra Art Workshop, we host Bikaner Art Workshop, we host a Kishangarh Art Workshop as well. Could you share a little more about, like, how did this branching of them start as well?
Okay, yeah, great question. So really what you have is this very strong atelier in the period of Akbar. It's a huge atelier. We know he has somewhere between 100 to 120 artists at the kind of high point of it. Now, of course, all this time, there is artwork going on in localities, in different regional centers. We don't have a lot of that surviving in the kind of 16th century period. But then when you come into the 17th century, Jahangir, which in many ways the sort of period of Jahangir and Shah Jahan is kind of considered a golden age of Mughal painting. It's where Jahangir basically gets rid of a lot of the artists, and he keeps this very elite workshop of about 30 artists, and they all become these big personalities. You know, the idea of artists signing their works, there's a lot more self-portraiture of artists at that period. So they're these real kind of, you know, quite stellar, you know, individuals.
They're the heroes.
And same into the Shah Jahan period. Now, what we see is amongst what you know scholars call sub-imperial patrons, which basically means anyone who's not part of the imperial family, but it includes, you know, all of those great Rajput kings, you know, in the Mewar, the Jodhpur, Kachwahar in Jaipur, in Amba. They all are kind of replicating in a way whatever is going on in the center with the Mughal school. They are also in a way engaging in art patronage. They have their own courts going on. Now sometimes they adopt a very Mughalized idiom, so it tends to be that those Rajasthani rulers who have close alliances, maybe marriage alliances with the Mughals, they tend to have a lot of work in a very Mughalized kind of idiom, like Bundi is particularly same. You know, the Jaipur school, the Amber Jaipur school in the early 17th century, you can hardly distinguish it actually from Mughal painting. It's quite hard to distinguish. But then if you think about Mewar, where they were very much trying to establish their independence from the Mughals, they maintain that the manuscripts and the patronage of their art has much more the look of, you know, of pre-Mughal style, of maintaining, you know, that solid saturated blocks of color. They don't go for such a Mughalized idiom. You know, they have, like, if you look at a manuscript like the mid-17th century Mewar Ramayana, and the artist is a fantastic artist called Sahibdin. He's actually a Muslim artist, but he's working in this wonderful kind of very Hindu idiom of painting, and he's obviously working is a Ramayana. So it shows the interflow. You know, sometimes people like to compartmentalize sort of religion and patronage, and it doesn't. It all breaks down actually when you're looking at this period. But what does happen then is, in the second half of the 17th century, you have an explosion of regional patronage, because Aurangzeb, when he comes to the throne, initially he keeps the painting atelier going, but he's not really that interested in it. And also he then, for ideological reasons, basically shuts down. And so you've got all these highly trained artists, but they're all needing new patrons. And so they sort of fan out and go into work for either to the Punjab hills or into Rajasthan. So you have this great growth really in the regional schools and also as the Mughal Empire begins to disintegrate more, and as there's a sort of power vacuum,
power dynamics,
all these more regional rulers are kind of upping the stakes, upping their game with their own art patronage, because that's a way of establishing your power. And so that leads to the development of more regional schools and styles, and that's how you get all this kind of like very Marwari painting or Kishangarh style, like that. That's really how it goes.
Lovely. So it's all a lot of sort of power dynamics changing, and that kind of influencing the art a lot as well. Like you said, I love that point about like the rulers who want to kind of, you know, maintain allegiance with the Mughals versus the rulers who want to, like, you know, exert more power, and how you know their styles started to get differentiated. There's
a really interesting artist called Dal Chand. He works at Aurangzeb's court in Delhi. And he's probably actually patronized by the eldest, his patron's probably the eldest son of Aurangzeb, who then later rules as Bahadur Shah the first. But then he leaves Delhi and he goes off to work for the Kishangarh ruler. you immediately see a change in his style. You can see the way in which he's drawing kind of more,
Is
you know,
yeah.
Rajput style. And I think that's another really interesting thing about the whole Mughal school, is that style, when, you know, for me, having grown up learning Western art, we always think of style as just this innate way that the artist chooses to paint. But very much within India, and this is true even in pre-Mughal painting, artists were adept at painting in a lot of different styles. Style
Yeah.
is more like a performance, and the artist can put on this costume or that
This,
costume,
yeah,
perform in that
yeah,
style or in this style. You know,
right.
so it's much more blended, much more
Beautiful.
hybrid, much
Yeah,
more about, you know,
yeah.
connections. Yeah.
Love that. Yeah. Is there a count of like how many different schools of art sort of evolved from that period? Like, is there, you know, a number like, you know, the all the
Oh, I
different
don't know.
Rajasthan schools?
I don't know the answer to that. And also, I mean, I think what's really fascinating is that, you know, you maybe have the Mewar school,
Yeah.
but within that as well, then you, when you sort of drill down into the art being produced by the Tikanas as well,
Hmm.
you know, like you get all these sub styles as well, like
Yeah. Yeah.
within, say, Badnor Tikana or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that has my head buzzing because I'm like, oh my God, how many master classes do we need to create for all these different styles? Because ultimately, yeah, we would love to be able to capture all of these different styles. Is there a
yeah,
favorite painting you have? Like of everything that you studied, is there something that's deeply influenced you that you really love?
yeah. Well, I mean, this is a kind of very famous painting to cite, but you know, I love the painting of Jahangir embracing
Mm,
Shah Abbas.
yeah.
It's in the Free Gallery of Art. It's a very famous painting where the emperor is standing. He's got this very, like, you know, dominant body, and he's embracing the Shah, the Safavid Shah, who was one of his biggest kind of rivals.
Yeah.
And there's this huge golden sun halo behind him, and then he's
Hmm.
standing on a lion, and that lion and the lamb is the Shah standing on that, and he then it's on a globe.
Yeah.
And it just brings together to me so much of what Mughal art is about. And the thing is, it's a painting that has been looked at and looked at for so long. But then recently, when I was writing about it for my book, actually, I
I know,
suddenly was
right? I was going to say that
thinking,
you're writing a book about Mughal
yeah.
court paintings, which is
So I was
beautiful.
looking
Yeah.
at it and I was thinking, you know, I was thinking about how Jahangir's body is this axis that connects heaven and earth, right? Because
Yeah.
his head is right at the center of the halo
Mm,
and his feet are on the globe. But then I suddenly realized, you know, his feet are not actually on the globe. His feet are actually on the lion. And I suddenly realized that another layer to the whole painting, that what Abul Hassan, the artist, was doing was inserting Jahangir's body into the center of the Mughal insignia,
hmm.
which is a recumbent lion with a rising sun. And yet here you have like the recumbent lion, which draws a lot on European art too in
Mm.
its kind of style,
Style. Yeah.
and its source material. And then Jahangir's there, and now the sun is fully risen. And so it was just really nice. It was a lovely moment where you think, gosh,
Wow.
scholars have
You,
been looking at this for
yeah.
years and years and years, and yet, you know, there's still
So
more to
still more.
see, you know,
Yeah.
something new to see. So I wrote about that in a little article that was published in a small journal out of Hong Kong called Orientations. It's a
Hmm.
lovely magazine, actually,
Okay.
a magazine journal. So that came out in
Beautiful. Yeah.
earlier, well, about this time last year, something like that.
Great.
But yeah, my book is still, I'm desperately kind of trying to finish the editing on it.
Oh,
And
lovely. It's reached an editing stage, so that's good. First drafts
it's
are
reached
done.
the editing stage, but
Yeah.
there's an awful lot of editing to do. And yeah, there's just so much life that always happens, isn't there? You know,
Yeah. I
I
know.
don't
But
know
I'm so glad you're
whether I'm
writing
the
about it.
world's
I mean,
slowest.
yeah.
Like this
No,
week,
I'm
this
sure you're
week I
not. This
saw,
is just such a big topic, honestly. I can't even imagine how you've tried to like how
yeah.
you chose what you've chosen for the book.
Yeah, well, it takes a
Beautiful.
kind of thematic view of Mughal
Yeah, yeah.
painting. So, you know, there's a chapter on portraiture, chapter on landscape, on nature, like that.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Can't wait for it actually. But
Mm.
do tell us a bit about your Instagram account as well. It's such a beautiful account, honestly. Like it's one account I regularly check
Uh,
because I love, you know, like your recent post about the evolution of prints, for example, was just so beautiful. Like, you know, the repetition of patterns. I mean, you never think of it because we just see it so often, so we just don't think about it anymore. But the
Yeah,
fact that, oh, actually at some point of time it must have started suddenly, right? Like that's an
yeah,
interesting sort of point actually. But what led you to start your Instagram account, and
yeah,
what do you hope people take away from that?
yeah. So please do follow me,
Yeah.
first of all, at
Yes,
Ursula Weekes. I
everybody,
love that.
it's a beautiful account. Like I said, it's definitely one of my go-to accounts. I love checking it. It's You write beautifully, you curate beautifully. It's lovely.
Thank you so much. Well, I started it at the beginning of 2021, like I guess like a lot of people in lockdown with a
Yeah,
bit more time
yeah.
and a bit more space. And I was thinking, I was doing a lot of work on my book, and I was thinking I have so many ideas, and also having lived in India and traveling and leading tours in India, I have so many of my own photographs.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, I kind of almost started it a bit like my own journal, and just
Mm.
thought I'm just going to put a little thing out most days,
Yeah,
just with one really clear point. And I must say, I found it such a great discipline for myself to like just
yeah.
think about one important point and just communicate that in an accessible way. I
Mm.
love to do that, and I've learned
Yeah.
so much myself through being on Instagram. Sometimes you got to go and check it. One thing I love about Instagram is if you make any
Somebody will
mistake,
somebody
somebody
will check
tells you
it like
so quickly. So
it's
it's a
like
really good
Wikipedia. Yeah, it's
it's a really good
Wikipedia
way of learning.
literally. Yeah, that's true. That's
So
very true.
so I love that. I love the beauty of it. I mean, I think, Instagram is made for art historians, because it's just perfect.
I wish more of our historians would think that and come over here and, like you said, make information accessible to more people. You're doing
Yeah,
that beautifully, and
yeah.
I wish
Well,
more
I
people would do that.
yeah, it's true. I do always try to put exactly the details of where the image is. I always
Yeah.
put the shelf mark, I put the institution, because I feel like if it's going to be useful to somebody else, they have to be able to go and access it. So I do think of my Instagram as something like a little bit of a research tool for other people. And
Hmm.
actually, I find I go back and check things myself from my
Yeah.
Instagram.
Makes
Sometimes you
sense.
have to scroll
Yeah.
down through hundreds of
Yeah.
posts to find the one you
Yeah.
want.
We just have
Um,
someone
so yeah.
commenting and telling you actually how they regularly read your posts about paintings on Instagram. Someone of you, yeah,
Uh,
Kasturi is just commented and complimented you.
Well,
Sorry,
thank
yes,
you.
go
Thank
ahead.
you so much. Yeah, so I love just, sharing what I'm thinking about. And at times, there are some times when, I've been through a few periods where I've just felt like this is an effort.
Hmm.
And whenever I feel that, I know that it doesn't, then I just post a little bit less, because basically my own feeling about it is that if you're doing it in a passionate way, that
Yeah,
just comes across
it just,
straight away.
hmm.
And as soon
Yeah,
as it's an effort or forced, that comes across too.
as well.
If you're
Yeah,
only doing it for followers or only doing it for attention or
yeah,
something like that. And in one sense, I feel like my Instagram should mean something, even if nobody else reads it.
yeah, yeah. It's
It
for
just means
you.
something
Yeah,
to me.
yeah,
So it's like
yeah.
letting people in on a little bit of me and what I'm doing,
Lovely. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and thank you to all the people that make it so enjoyable to do
No,
that.
it's
But yeah.
beautiful. Like I said, I mean, I'm glad you yourself go back to refer to it as well. I mean, as you rightly said, you've been using it as your personal journal, but thank you for opening it up to the rest of us as well, because honestly, it does make, things really accessible. Honestly, like, that's this point about, replicating patterns, in Mughal art, like I had no idea that at some point it started like that, right? So these
Yeah.
are beautiful little nuggets, which just kind of make art, which feels a little scary that, oh my god, this is, miniature art, Mughal miniature. It's such a huge field. It's so hard to kind of, get your head around it, but you're making it accessible bit by bit, bite by bite. So that's really amazing for sure. And yeah, I mean, we've already run over time, but there's so much more to talk about, to be honest. But I'd love to just kind of, end by asking you about a little bit about what do you think is the future of, sort of traditional arts in general, and specifically Mughal miniature as well? Do you see a resurgence and interest again? And what can people who do have an interest, other than reading and following your account for sure, what are the other places you'd recommend people can go to like know more, read more, just sort of, yeah, find out more?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. I mean, when I first started working on Mughal art, so this was like when I had first moved to India, there really was, all the publications were just museum publications or little small
Yeah.
exhibitions, or exhibitions from the past, and there wasn't a really concentrated sort of I think in the field of historical studies,
Yeah.
there was strong development,
Hmm.
especially from like Aligarh Muslim University.
I'm
There
from
were a lot of
Aligarh, by
scholars
the
there.
way.
Say again? Is it?
That's my city. I'm from Aligarh.
Oh, wow, fantastic. They have the amazing Mansour tulip. Aligarh Muslim University has
Ah,
the
okay.
Mansour tulip. Um,
Okay. Interesting. I
so you
must go
should do a
back sometime.
masterclass
Yeah.
just on that.
Yeah.
Um, so um, but then the point I'm trying to make is, within the last 20 years,
Hmm.
the last 15-20 years, there has just been an explosion really of interest
Hmm.
in the scholarly world, like of young academics coming through working on Mughal India. And I think that really does speak of the relevance and ongoing, like bringing it to the fore. And I think the Mughals have a real place in kind of Indian popular culture too. They are part, well, obviously they're very much part of a contemporary debate about what is India and what
Hmm.
is India,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
it is a politicized space. Sometimes that scares me as well,
Hmm.
because always before, I kind of thought the role of the job of being an art historian was one of those
It's
jobs where
just to
everyone
doc.
just goes,
Yeah.
oh, how lovely,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there's nothing controversial about it. Whereas now, being an art historian, it is controversial. You're caught
Yeah.
in the culture
Yeah.
wars quite
Yeah.
often,
Yeah.
in what you're doing. So I think the Mughals are very relevant because they're a very active part of the whole debate about who we are, what is our
Yeah.
identity. And in a way, they are very expressive of
Hmm.
a society that could embrace religious pluralism very
Yes.
comfortably
Very
within
true. Yeah.
India, because
Yeah.
they gave space for every community,
Yeah.
certainly in the period really from Humayun all the way through to Shah Jahan.
Sure. Yeah.
You can see that very predominantly in their rule. But I think also, in terms of the Mughal miniature, as as it impacts contemporary art and artists, that's also really exciting. I mean, there's
Hmm.
always been a fascinating legacy of the Mughal miniature,
Yeah.
and in India, that has tended to be the legacy is through family, is through dynasty, right? So, you
Hmm.
go to Jaipur and you'll meet artists, and they will say, oh, I can count back 7-8 generations of my
Generations.
family working for the Maharaja. Um,
Yeah.
but that has in India more, that has led to a kind of replication of copying, of
Hmm.
amazing at the best level, incredible copying,
Yeah.
but not so much of innovation.
Hmm.
Whereas when you look on the Pakistan side, to like the Lahore School of Art, because also the legacy of the Mughal miniature is their legacy as
Yeah.
part of the
Yeah.
India's continent, South Asia. And there you have incredibly creative
Mm-hmm.
engagement with the Mughal miniature, but in a much more contemporary way. So
Interesting.
like you think of artists like Shazia Sikandar, of Shoaib Mahmood, of
Mm-hmm.
Aisha Durrani. I love her work.
Lovely. I'm
She
going to look
uses
up all of these artists.
she uses
Yeah.
the like symbol of the golden disc, and
Mm-hmm.
then has these wonderful, like her signature thing is like a tailor's dummy.
Mm.
So it's like the figure of a woman, but then just with the like little
Hmm.
wooden spike of the head. And she's exploring a lot of issues to do with the identity of women,
Interesting.
within
Yeah.
her culture and so on. So I love
Oops. Yeah. Hmm.
this, like the Singh twins based in Liverpool,
Mm-hmm.
who engage so much with the Mughal miniature. And I also think now this is something within like Indian contemporary artists. So
Sorry, I think you were getting a call. Lost you there for a second. No worries.
I
Yeah.
was Sorry.
No worries, no
Yeah.
worries. Yeah.
So
Yes.
I think the legacy of the miniature is alive and kicking and
Hmm.
amazing, and yeah,
But a little bit
and
of
also for
innovation, bit of
workshops.
innovation needed in India for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. This has been such an amazing conversation, Ursula. Honestly, I've learned so much. I hope the audience has learned, a lot as well. And honestly, like I can imagine having a 2, 3 hour conversation with you. There's so much to sort of explore. And as we've discussed, I'm going to pick your brains later and make sure that we can record something with you as well, especially whenever you visit India next. But for everyone watching, like we said, do follow Ursula's account as well. She writes beautifully about Mughal miniature, and we're looking forward to your book releasing soon. No pressure, but yeah,
Yeah, early
I'm definitely
2024,
going to get
hopefully.
a copy. I'm definitely going to get a copy when it's out, and hopefully we'll have more conversations with you. And I'm going to all the accounts that you mentioned, all the artists that you mentioned, we'll look them up as well. We'll probably try and link, all of them in the conversation comments. So anybody who's interested,
Great.
they can go follow and explore their work as well. But thank you so much for taking the time. This was lovely.
Thank you. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for
I shall
joining
see you.
everyone. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.